All right. Hello, everybody. And welcome to another edition of Sundance Books and Music's live stream. My name is Danilo Thomas, and I'm the managing editor at Baobab Press, which is the publishing arm of Sundance Books and Music in Reno, Nevada. And I'm happy to introduce today's author. Today, we are joined by S.J. Sindu, whose new book, Blueskin Gods, is available in the store right now. So make sure you go by and pick up a copy. S.J. Sindu is the author of the novel Marriage of a Thousand Lives, which won the Publishing Triangle Edmund White Debut Fiction Award, was a finalist for the Lambda Literary Award, and was an ALA Stonewall Honor Book, as well as the hybrid fiction and nonfiction chapbook, I Once Met You, But You Were Dead. She holds an MA in English from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and a PhD in English and creative writing from Florida State University. Sindu teaches at the University of Toronto Scarborough, and she's going to be reading from Blueskin Gods today. So we're very excited about that. If you are on the YouTube live chat, please put in questions in the comments section, and we will get to those as soon as Sindu is done reading. So welcome, Sindu.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Okay, so I'm going to read just from near the beginning of the book, but it's not the beginning. So the book is about a boy named Kalki who lives at an ashram in India, and he's 10 years old. He's believed to be a living god. So he's believed to be the next incarnation of Vishnu, and he's believed to have healing powers. And his first night that he turns 10, all these people come to the ashram seeking healing, and he is supposed to heal this girl named Rupa, and he fails. So this is right after that. And the only thing you need to know is that Lakshman is his cousin and his best friend, and Aya is his father. After breakfast in the courtyard, a silent affair, Lakshman and I headed out to play in the coconut grove, which lay to the west of the ashram and was so deep and thick that I hadn't seen the other side. Giddy with our rare freedom, we raced each other through the grass to the trees. As we ran, Vasandichiti, Lakshman's mother, followed behind us, carrying a blanket and a book. I tried to let the fun absorb me fully, but the guilt of not healing Rupa gnawed at the back of my mind. When we reached the coconut grove, Lakshman and I played our favorite game, acting out scenes from the Mahabharata. Vasandichiti kept an eye on us from the blanket she spread out on the dirt. She sat with her legs folded underneath her, the pleats of her pordave flowing all around, and a ragged copy of a Tamil novel in her hand. Aya didn't like us reading anything that wasn't religious. He thought it put strange ideas into our heads, poisoning our brains. But Vasandichiti owned some books that Aya didn't know about, books with pictures of sad women on the covers. She hummed under her breath as she read. Like Amma, she was pliant and soft all over, except for her sharp elbows and collarbones. Unlike Amma, though, she had thin, slanted eyes and a pointed chin that Lakshman had inherited. She plaited her kinky black hair into a braid that ran down her spine, which she liked tossing this way and that over her shoulder as she read. Lakshman and I acted out the crucial battle scene from the Mahabharata, in which the hero Arjuna despairs at the thought of killing his great uncle on the battlefield. In response, the avatar Krishna, Arjuna's friend and charioteer, reveals his true god form as Vishnu and begins narrating the text of the Bhagavad Gita. Lakshman, playing Arjuna, kneeled in front of me, the pleats of his white cotton veshti pooling around his lap. I can't do this, Krishna. He blinked his glassy eyes. He's my great uncle. I can't kill him. I stood on my tiptoes to pretend that I was swelling to my god size. Arjuna, I said. I used the best god voice I could muster from deep inside my stomach. This is your duty to your family, to your brother and king. You must fulfill your destiny. Lakshman nodded at the ground. He prayed to me, and I blessed him. You are weak, Arjuna, I said. You are distracted. Lakshman stood. This was the part where he strung his bow and, with tears running down his face, shot arrow after arrow into the coconut tree that we pretended was Arjuna's great uncle Bhishma. I want to be Krishna, Lakshman said. You're always Krishna. His thick eyebrows drew together. He put his fists on his hips. I want to be Krishna. The sun beat down, but he didn't seem to mind. My arms itched with sweat. He was acting this way because Aya had scolded me, because I hadn't healed Rupa. He too thought I was less of a god because I hadn't passed my first trial easily. Let me be Krishna, he said. I shook my head. I was Kalki, even if I'd had a momentary struggle with healing Rupa, which meant I was all my previous lives, including Krishna. He couldn't change that by pretending. He dropped his bow. Let me be Krishna. I'm Krishna, I said. He put 2 hands on my chest and pushed me hard. I was slightly taller, but he had the muscle mass. I fell backward into the grass, the blades rubbing my back raw. Lakshman, his mother scolded. She rushed over and helped me to my feet. My yellow Panchakancha veshti was stained green. The full shame of Aya's words and the failures of the night before hit me as I looked up at Lakshman. Lakshman, apologize, Vasnichiti said. I sat in the grass, trying to wipe my tears away without them seeing. Gods didn't cry, even when they were children, even if they were failures. Lakshman watched me for a while, his face pinched. He dropped to his knees and threw his arms around my neck. I'm sorry, big brother, he said. I'm sorry. You're Krishna. I'm sorry. Back at the ashram before lunch, Aya called me to the courtyard, and I went, my face scrubbed clean of dried tears, my knees wobbly and nervous. Our small square courtyard had no roof. A mango tree grew out of the concrete foundation and spread its leaves over us. In the middle of the open square, a tulsi plant flowered in a raised concrete pot. Tulsi was considered holy, an incarnation of Lakshmi herself, and at every end of the Tamil month of Kartikeya, we performed a wedding ritual where the tulsi plant was married off to Vishnu. On most days, my mother and Basanti Chitti squatted in the courtyard, picking rocks out of rice on broad palm leaf sifters and laying out sheets of red chili peppers to dry in the sun. Now they brought out clay pots of rice and curries from the kitchen and set up our banana leaves, their backs hunched under the shade of the mango tree. Aya sat on the step that led down into the sunken courtyard, leaning against a plaster column with the newspaper, The Hindu, open on his lap. He saw me and called me with a flick of his finger. I sat at his feet to show utmost respect, and I didn't look him in the eye. He tapped his knuckles once on the paper. The birthday present I arranged for you is so much better for you than a cricket bat, he said. There's a journalist coming this afternoon. He's going to do a story on you. Imagine. Aya held out his arms wide. You'll be in the Hindu. The world will know about you. He let his arms fall back down. That is, of course, if you heal Rupa. He's coming today to see her, and he'll come back in a month. If you heal her, he'll write up a story. I was still caught between renewed disappointment that I wouldn't be getting a cricket bat and panic that somebody would be checking my work with Rupa. I had to heal her. I had no choice. Aya had always helped me before, but this was my test, and I was on my own. You're going to have devotees all over the world, he said. This is your destiny, but first you heal Rupa. After lunch, I want you in your prayer night outfit. You've had enough playing for today. Thank you.
Yay, thank you for that, Sindu. In my panic, I forgot to hold up the book so everybody could see it. That is what it looked like. Blueskin Gods, wherever excellent books are sold. I had one job, I failed. So, Cindy, that's awesome. And I'm actually really glad that you read that from that portion of the book, because one of the things that I find exceptional about the book is how you are able to capture not only the voice but the feel of the relationships, but the voice of Kalki, but also, as he progresses, the age dynamic in the relationships he's in. For instance, the one between Lakshman and Kalki early on in the novel. And I was wondering, because that is so difficult to do. I was reading, I think it was in The Guardian, or one of the excellent reviews that came out about the book, that, there was something along a simple story, well told. And it reminded me of, we have the shop downstairs, we have stickers and things. And there's one that's attributed to Nathaniel Hawthorne that's like, easy reading is damn hard writing, right? And though I have a trouble envisioning Hawthorne saying that, but the point is that how do you go about doing crafting those where it feels like these are two young kids in this relationship, and as far as rendering that on the page, how do you, I guess, what is your process?
Thank you for saying that it's believable. I based a lot of it on, friendships I had with my cousins when I was that age. But also, I have a lot of male cousins who are around 6 years younger than me to about 15 years younger than me. So there's a bunch of them, and I've seen them grow up together. And I've seen that particularly male version of the childhood friendship, and how it's slightly different when you involve expectations of masculinity in that kind of relationship, where there's jealousy, there's genuine love and caring, but they're also trying to be men in certain ways. And so I've watched a lot of that as my cousins and my brother grew up. So that's really the basis for a lot of my Kalki specific relationship.
Yeah, no, it reminded me of, growing up with my brother, and it reminded us we were exactly what you're saying. You're trying to be hard, but at the same time, you're still, very physical and loving in ways that, sort of digress, but it feels very, just very honest and really well rendered as far as those childhood relationships go. But yeah, and it brings up another interesting, because I was thinking about research, and there are definitely what seem like research aspects. At one point, there's a short section where you're talking about other child gods, or that come up, which seems like more of a academic research type. But then there's some of the really believably really well-rendered scenes, the New York, punk scene in bars, the ashram itself. When you're writing a book like this, I guess, how do you feel like you're doing different kinds of research, specifically, or how do you go about compiling the facts that accumulate into the whole of the novel, I guess?
I like to write as I research. I really don't split it, because I feel, for me, that's how it gets that kind of texture, is that I will add certain little bits in each as I'm drafting. So in each draft, I'll put more and more in there. So I did do a lot of research on Hinduism. I did a lot of research on mythology. I did a lot of research on child gods. So that was the academic kind of research. And then there was a lot of lived research where I, walked around New York and spent time there and went to a bunch of shows and hung out with musicians, and just not purposefully for the book, but it's in the book because I had that experience. So I always it's scary to me to write about things that are so outside things that I've been around. I like it. I write fantasy, and I've never, done magic, but things that people in this world have experience with, if I'm going to write about it, I want to at least have some level of research done, so that I can get close. Like, I never want to be in that position where I get it wrong. I'm sure I do get it wrong often, but I try really hard not to.
Yeah, I think that the experience of it is as you can. I feel like you can do the research, and then it feels like, I'm sure you have books where it feels like like the lines have been regurgitated off of like Google search or something, right? Whereas this feels, it feels extremely lived in. To be, as I was reading it, I was like, oh, this feels like a genuine experience, and it has the authority everywhere between talking, like, again, certain scenes, but also like the exposition when people need to be filled in on the details behind the religious aspects, and how straightforward to the point, but also authorial they are. I just thought that was extremely well done.
Thank you.
We do have one question about the research. It says, the question is, was your inspiration for the premise of the novel research on child gods, or did you have I guess which one came first there?
It was, so the research, it wasn't really research at that point. I was watching a documentary about, it's called Kumare. It's by Vikram Gandhi, who's a filmmaker. He's a South Asian American filmmaker, and he has this documentary where he pretends to be a guru, and he walks around and he like makes up yoga moves, and like he convinces a whole bunch of people that he is a living guru and that they should follow him around. And she like sets up this ashram in in the Southwest of the US. And he, at the end of the documentary, like he tells them that he's a fraud. And like some people are mad at him, but a lot of people are like, no, you're still a guru. Like, this is a test and I believe in you. And I was like, that's so fascinating. I like, it blew my mind. I was like, what? Even though he told you he like made it all up, and there's proof, like there's literally a documentary that he's making about the gullibility that people have for this kind of like, sort of occultish guru swami type stuff. He's still believed by a lot of people. I don't know. And so I was really interested in this phenomenon of gurus and leaders, especially coming out of India. And there's several sort of big businesses that have sprung up. I don't know what to call it. It's like the Swami industrial complex. There, it's capitalism on steroids, but with spirituality sort of that spirituality is the product. And so I was really interested in that. And then once I started to do more research, I discovered that some of these gurus are children, or that there are these sort of similar capitalist notions about children, like the kid who supposedly went to heaven and came back and got a book deal and like had a movie made about him and all this stuff. And I'm interested, like I got really interested in that. Like, what does it do to a child to be involved in something like that and be the center of something like that? So that's kind of how it started. And then I started doing the intense research. So I mean, before that, I wouldn't call it research. It was just sort of something I stumbled on Netflix, which just happened to inspire the novel. So I'm really glad I stumbled on it.
Netflix is the gift that keeps on giving, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, it's fascinating, and it spits out a number of craft questions, but yeah, I mean, the novel itself, like it reminds me of a meme I saw recently about like the millennial, will be it'll be like Wiccan breaks at work or something like that, right? Because exactly talking about the yogi, you won't have yoga breaks and all that stuff. You'll now have like whatever the niche religions aspect is of the time or something like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think it's the angle of who it's discussing or the problems behind that. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because Kaki, right, it seems to obviously be he's a child taking advantage of, and you know, Aya is very clearly the person that's doing that from the onset, right? But there seems to be a lot more at stake, and I don't want to give away the end of the novel, but like, you know, as far as commentary relevant to, you know, contemporary times, like I guess what or who? I mean, do you have like a specific audience in mind that you're attacking there? Or not attacking, sorry, that's a wrong word, but you know, like sort of take like with like the idea that you're taking to task, and I guess it was like, how does that also sort of produce the seeds of writing a book like this?
I think I the thing I'm attacking is the exploitation of people's spiritual needs by people who are really in it for the wrong reasons, right? Like they're in it for fame, they're in it for power, they're in it for money. And there's been since the 60s, maybe even before that, this trend of Westerners going to India specifically for spiritual enlightenment. Like the Beatles did it, you know, a bunch of hippies did it, and people are still doing it. They're going to ashrams to learn yoga. They're, you know, going and they have all these gurus who like tour the world, and they have these like giant conventions in these almost mega church like places, and you know, and then there's the mega churches who are in it, you know, it's the new version of televangelism. They're in it for the wrong reasons, and they're making a ton of money off of people who all like who just want spirituality or religion in their lives. So I've totally lost track of your question, but can you can you repeat it?
No, I think that answers it. I was just, you know, I was like, who is being held to task? Because
Mhm.
like it's easy to be like, this is the bad guy. Don't do this to kids. But there's you basically you have something larger on your mind, and you know, I think that gets to the heart of it. And the second half of the question was like, how is that you know, help you as the author sort of drive, you know, like does it help you finish the book? Does it help you write towards something? Like, as far as the process of actually writing the book, and I think this goes into a question we have here. The question is, has writing Blueskin Gods expanded your personal writing style for things you'll write in the future? Is having something like that in mind help in that regard, or in any aspect of the creative process?
It does, because you know I was specifically taking this particular type of industry to task, and as I was writing, you know, there's all this stuff happening around me. Even more gurus were going on tour, and a bunch of my friends were like getting into it, and they were going to these things, and they were getting involved. And I was like, oh no, don't do this. And then like the fundamentalist Hinduism is on the rise in India, and you know the BJP party is in power, and religious minorities are being targeted in India currently, and there's just all this stuff going on, and that to me is what drove me to really finish the book. I wanted it out there in this current moment when, you know, we're dealing with all of this stuff right now, instead of like, you know, at a future date when it would no longer apply. Hopefully it would no longer apply. Um, what was the question from YouTube?
It is how has writing Blueskin Gods expanded your personal
Yes.
writing style for things that you'll write in the future, hopefully?
Yeah, it got me thinking a lot about children and the child's perspective. I hadn't written from a child's perspective really before that wasn't my own. So I was writing like personal essays and lyric essays from my own perspective as a child, but I hadn't like inhabited the perspective of a child character really before. My previous novel is from the perspective of a late to mid-20s woman. So this was new to me, and it was hard to write, but it did get me really interested in that age range. And so actually the next book I wrote after Blueskin Gods is a graphic novel called Shakti, and it's a fantasy graphic novel aimed at the 8 to 12 age range. So around what Kalki is at the beginning of the novel. Because I was so interested in that kind of that perspective. And also, I'm of the age where a lot of my friends have children, and many of those children are in that age range, especially at the beginning of that age range, like 8 or 9. And just interacting with them is fascinating to me. Just, seeing what their worldview looks like, what they're concerned about, what they're interested in, what kinds of like adult things they're thinking about and trying to work through in their heads. So it did get me sort of writing a completely different kind of thing that I never thought I never thought I would write kid lit. That was just totally off my radar, and then it just sort of came in because I started writing this novel.
It's actually astounding that that's the first that you've taken that on, because then again it's really extremely well crafted. But I should also say too that you get as an editor, right, like in these politically charged times, you get a lot of political fiction. You get a lot of fiction about sort of the jaded 20s where like people are distraught and drinking too much, and like sort of like the party memoirs or the party, which is all fine and good. It can be well done, but I think that you capture both the political aspect and that age of like the 20s, sort of figuring out who you or who the characters are as they search, without going overboard or anything like that. Is that something you had in mind when you were writing that, or is that more along the lines of like experiential learning without being gratuitous to some extent? Because it's all there. It feels very lived in once again, but like that particular age range, I think is hard to write as much as the young children. Did you find that part difficult, or was that sort of along the same lines as the child characters?
I think that one was easier to me to write because obviously my early 20s are much closer than my childhood, and I don't well, there's a lot of reasons I don't remember my early 20s very well, but what I do remember is that I just felt so lost. I felt like I wasn't just trying to figure out who I was. I was also trying to figure out what kind of life I wanted to live. And I, tried a lot of things that I never thought I would try. I grew up in a very strict household. We weren't allowed past like 9 p.m. outside at night, and I wasn't allowed to date, and I wasn't allowed, there was no imbibing of alcohol or any substances. And I wasn't even allowed to wear like certain things because it was too much. I was showing too much skin or whatever. So in my early 20s, I was like, I'm going to try everything. I'm going to do everything. I'm just going to be a heathen. And it was great. In that it really allowed me to experience life, but also figure out who I was or who I am. And I wanted Kalki to have that experience. So like, I loved writing that part, but a lot of that is because like that kind of search for identity meant a lot to me. And so I was able to put a lot of that into Kalki and into his experience, which is also why, like, coming back to craft a little bit, like the first 2/3 of the novel, which take place at the ashram, when Kalki's younger, are fairly slowly paced. And then as soon as he is sort of a young adult in his early 20s and he leaves the ashram, like everything starts going really fast. And it's some people hate it. Apparently, I've read some reviews where some people hate it, but I did want to. I did that on purpose to capture the pace of life that seems to happen at that age, where everything just seems so big and so intense, and everything seems to be happening really fast and at a rushed pace.
Yeah, I disagree with that critique. I really like that, how you pace that, because yeah, when you're a child, right, it feels like every year feels like it's forever, and then it seems like we were talking, like these last, you get older and the years fly by, and all those old cliches and things. But I thought that worked extremely well.
Thank you.
For you, and I think it really helps build. I mean, I think that's one thing without giving away is that, like, I feel so strongly reading this book for Kalki, but I have no idea, how to help Kalki, like as a reader. Like it's like, oh, sometimes like if I was there, I'd give, this advice or whatever, but it's just like, you're on your own, man. You gotta go live that life or something. And I think that's a great headspace to be in reading the book, because there's a sort of, nostalgia there that's also a little bit, uncanny valley. It's a little bit sinister in some way too, but it makes for extremely compelling reading.
Thank you.
But going back to that, because I had questions about the form, and again, the crafting of the novel. I'm always interested about how people go about formulating the novel from the kernel of the idea to the finished project. And I think you have 4 sections here, which you mentioned, the first 2/3, with Lakshman, Amma, and I, and then the last one, which is Kalki. And then people will see how that sort of fits in. But like when you were writing, plotting this out, in your Freytag's pyramid or whatever, however you were doing that sort of thing, I guess that's my question. Like, how did you come up with that? Is that something that you fit in beforehand? Is that something that you fit in afterwards? How did that all work out for you?
So I started writing it when I moved to Tallahassee for the PhD, actually. And you read, I think, probably the earliest version in Janine, or in Elizabeth's novel class. And by that point, like, so I spent the first year of my PhD basically drafting this novel, and I thought of it as a 4-act structure, which is why it's in 4 pieces. Because I felt like this was only the second novel I'd ever written. That's not true. There's one in the middle there that just got scrapped, but we don't talk about that one. This is the 3rd novel, the second novel that's published. And I still felt like I didn't quite know how to take on this giant project, because a novel is huge. It is, 300 pages or more. This was, I think, 350 manuscript pages. And it's just such a big, monstrous thing that, you can't hold all of it in your head at once. So I needed to break it up into manageable pieces so that I could, like, just think about the whole thing. And breaking it up into 4 pieces meant that I can think about all of part 1. I can remember every scene in part 1. I can't remember every scene in the whole novel. So it was that one's like a way to make it more manageable, a project, to sort of shrink it, but also in terms of thinking about plot, which I like in my first novel, I didn't really I thought about plot after I actually wrote it. Right, I wrote the first draft and then I tried to plot it. So this time I wanted to start with plot. I wanted a plot that made sense. so that I didn't have to do it later. So 4-act structure, great, tried and true form. So that's kind of how I thought about it in the beginning stages, and I think it more or less maps that way. It's a little wonky toward the end because I was like, at the end I was like, let's just unravel everything. Like, structure doesn't matter anymore. He's sort of on his own, and he's doing that like early 20s finding yourself kind of journey, which was super fun to write. But yeah, the 4-act structure I think works well for this book. I don't know. I mean, the books I'm working on now, I'm not splitting into parts. So I'm going to try and approach it like trying to hold all of it at once. We'll see how that works.
Yeah, I just think it's hysterical. It's good. I mean, returning to that quote about the easy reading, damn hard writing, right? Just trying to keep all of your, what did I think Skip Horak used to say, keeping all of your plates spinning, right? Was his analogy,
Oh, yeah.
without dropping them, which is insanely difficult to do. And, even great novelists such as yourself, there's as many ways to write them or unwrite it or try something new every time, which I think is probably part of the fun experience if you're having fun doing those things, right? Yeah. So to sort of bring in your other novel, the Marriage of a Thousand Lies, one of the questions is that do you think that Marriage of a Thousand Lies and Blueskin Gods experience the coming of age theme on their own terms? That's the question we got from.
Okay. Yes. I think they do. Marriage is a very late sort of coming of age story. Like, she's already 27 when it starts, and so it's definitely it does follow that sort of Bildungsroman type of story, but it's also a coming out story. So like, it's taking on both of those forms and like squishing them together in some ways. And I think that is not, I mean, it's common as a structure, but because it's particularly takes place later in life, and because it's South Asian and it's doing a lot of like structural things that I took from South Asian stories, like it's structured kind of like a Bollywood movie in, satirically. So it like starts with an engagement and ends with a wedding. And there's a lot of like satire of the expected Bollywood tale in like inside the novel. So I played with it that way. This one to me like feels a little bit different from the usual because it's the scope of time is large. So we're spanning 12 years instead of like a small amount of time. So which was really exciting for me because I got to like help my characters grow up. I got to trace how they develop over 12 years and figure out like how the traits they exhibit as children get to mature and get to complicate and sort of become adult personalities. And so that was really fun to do. So I don't know if these are truly, changing the playing field in terms of the Bildungsroman, but I think that I didn't approach it with that particular structure in mind. I didn't approach it with that goal of writing a coming of age story. So because of that, and because I do play around with a lot of tropes of coming of age stories, I would say that they are a little bit different than maybe your norm.
Yeah, I love the borrowed structure and secret structures like that. Following the Bollywood trajectory is amazing. I'll have to reread that. I did not see that in there, but knowing that now, you can totally see it. Kernels of knowledge, love it. You also write a fair amount of really awesome chapbooks, right? You have I Met You, But You Were Dead, right? That's correct. And I think did you have one just come out or one forthcoming from?
It's coming out in February. It's called Dominant Genes, and it's a hybrid sort of lyric essay and poetry chapbook. So this is the first thing I've ever published that has poetry in it. And I'm kind of like, yeah, I don't know. I don't consider myself a poet, so it feels like I'm really just putting myself out there with this chapbook.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. I mean, and I feel like reading the shift. I guess this is more of a maybe for the kids out there that are getting into writing and are those of us still pursuing it and things like that. You have a very seamless sort of way of approaching like long form novels, chapbooks, hybrid pieces. And then also sort of mixing up your approach to all of these things. And I guess the question is why do you do that? Is there just a sort of personal drive to do that? Do you just like the different amount of forms or any other?
I think it's fun. I think in order to keep my enthusiasm up about writing, I love to switch forms and I like to try different things. Like I like to, with a new project, when I start a new project, I like to give myself a challenge. Like before I went to the PhD, I did a series of short stories where I was like, okay, in this short story, I'm going to kill off my character. In this story, I'm going to do this. And I gave myself like little challenges because I think for me, that's what is really exciting about writing is to try new things, to conquer new mountains. And yeah, I don't know. Some people climb mountains. I do this. And so, and the other thing is that whenever I'm working on a long piece of anything, fiction, usually, I like to have breaks where I work on something else. And I've gotten in the habit lately in the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years of having 2 or 3 long projects going on at the same time, broken up by, small pieces, like poetry or like a lyric essay or something. I just find it fun. I like to, when I'm stuck with one novel, I like to jump ship and work on something completely different. It's a palate cleanser. It's like I don't want to eat the same thing every single day. I mean, I kind of do, but I don't want to have to. And it's just, the variety is what keeps me interested and keeps me excited.
Yeah. Do you find that that can almost help you get unstuck on certain things? I feel like that's an experience I've had is if I'm so focused on one thing, if I shift gears to writing like an essay that, whatever side of my brain will free up and you have to jump back across. And
yeah, it's hard to get writer's block when you have like, 5 things you could work on at any given moment. I'm not saying that that's, writer's, I hate calling it writer's block. I'm not saying that like, moments of feeling stuck doesn't happen, but it's good to, for me, it's good to keep multiple plates spinning.
Nice. And I assume that you have a pretty healthy writing regimen daily to keep all of these things up in the air. As far as what did you get up at 4 a.m. daily and write for 6 hours, or how does that all unfold?
No, when I'm teaching, so I teach at the University of Toronto, and I cannot write much on teaching days. So I teach 1 or 2 days a week, And on those days, I don't do anything. But on my non-teaching days, and I try to take one day off per week where I do nothing that's work related or writing related, which I think is important. But so that leaves about 4 days a week where 3 or 4 days a week where I wake up. I'm not a morning person. I cannot wake up that early. So I wake up fairly late actually, and I write for 1 hour bursts, usually one burst or two bursts. I try to work on 2 different projects per day, and then do other work in the meantime, read a lot. So I actually don't like, if you just put all of my writing hours together, it doesn't amount to a ton. It's maybe like 5-6 hours a week total, but I try to totally focus during that time and get a lot done. And I'm a fan of like getting small amounts of work done in little parcels of time when I can.
Awesome. The little bits add up, right?
They do.
Well, awesome. I can't say how much of a pleasure it's been having you here, Sindu. It's our honor and pleasure. We have, I think, a good question to sort of check out on, and that is, are there any authors you are currently reading that you would recommend, or that were integral in any way to writing Blueskin Gods?
I'd say like when I was writing Blueskin Gods, I was reading a lot of like Akweke Emezi. I read Mohsin Hamid. I read Jasmine Ward, and I think those 3 specifically really helped me write the book. Right now, I'm reading a lot of graphic novels because I'm teaching writing for comics class. So I just read Spring Rain by Andy Warner and Stone Fruit by Lee Lai, and I highly recommend both of those books, as well as Are You My Mother by Alison Bechdel, which is just, Alison Bechdel is one of my all-time favorite writers. So that's like a no-brainer for me. But I recently discovered Andy Warner and Lee Lai, and those are 2 extremely awesome graphic novels.
Awesome. Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. Graphic literature is the best kind of literature. Have you read Adrian Tomein's Living and Dying?
Yeah.
Is another, I highly recommend graphic collection to check out.
I will check that out.
Check it out. Very much look forward to seeing your graphic novel come out too. That's a nice surprise. I didn't. Are you illustrating that as well, or who are you?
Oh no. No, a very talented illustrator by the name of Nabi Ali is doing the illustrations.
Very cool. Well, all of those books and others are available at Sundance Books and Music here in Reno, Nevada, or at your very fine local independent bookstore across the world. This is Blueskin Gods, with the glare there. By S.J. Sindu. I can't recommend it enough. Sindu, thank you so much for coming out and having the conversation with us. We really appreciate it, and we wish you nothing but the best for the book and your future endeavors.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and it was great to see you again.
All right, great to see you as always. Hopefully, went across. One of the notes here is that everyone is very excited to see you at AWP if you were going. So.
Oh yes, I am absolutely going.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for attending. We're going to sign off. Have fun and